Gill, good afternoon. Welcome to Rayner Research. Thank you so much for your valuable time today. Viewers out there, Gill is a famous author of Why Men Win at Work. Gill, you've been around the workplace for some time as an action coach, professional developer, and obviously we've invited you on today really just to understand a bit more about why you wrote the book, Why Men Win at Work, and very well timed just before the first ever Women in the State Agency event, which is ready to be launched this coming Thursday. So first of all, thank you very much for joining me, and really kind of want to get under your skin really today, understand why you put the book together. It's fascinating, really enjoyed the read, but do you want to give the viewers out there just a bit of understanding about you and your background so far?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for having me. Yes, so my background is I was born in Liverpool, UK based for a long time. I worked for Procter & Gamble for many years, first in the UK, then in Geneva. So worked on the UK business, worked internationally. My last job there was as Senior Vice President for the beauty business for Europe, India, Middle East and Africa. I was there over 26 years, and for really most of those years, absolutely, would not even have thought of writing a book like Why Men Win at Work. And it was really only in the last couple of years there when I was at that senior vice president level and I was in board meetings, executive meetings that were 80% plus men, that I really started to see and started to understand some of those gender equality or inequality dynamics and how those things do hold women back. I felt the impact, I saw the impact on the women around me and became really fascinated by it actually. Because I've not seen it. I know many women do enter a male-dominant culture earlier in their careers, and I feel very lucky that I didn't actually, but my goodness, when you hit it, I can tell you, you really hit it, and you really do feel the impact. So I researched it a lot, read a lot, and really felt I understood and understand why it happens, because I think that's what's fascinating. We all know it happens. We all know there's inequality in the world. You just have to look for a few minutes to see that everywhere, every country, business, sport, politics, whatever. Look at the top levels, it's 90% plus men. Everyone knows there's equality, but I think what most people don't really understand is why. Why does it happen? Why does it happen despite the fact that most men are actually good, decent, well-intended, even feminists, as I call them, but still nonetheless contributing to creating a world which is really not equal from any point of view, but certainly not from a gender point of view. So I wrote the book because I just felt I've got things to share here that I think would be really useful for all genders to understand. And I believe that when you understand why something happens, then you can fix it. And so that's why I wrote it. And I certainly the feedback that I get is that from men, from women, from everyone, is that it has been a huge help to them to navigate their own career and also to support the career of women around them.
Excellent, thank you. And again, as a recruitment partner to the property industry, clearly there's lots of things in your book that I want to kind of take away and open you up really to discuss a bit more. I've also asked several of the people that are attending the Women in the State Agency event this coming Thursday, and they've got a couple of questions as well. So I want to try and share them with you and see if we can get some answers if possible. So do you think people are turning down roles across the world, across different sectors, due to the gender pay gap stats that are out there and ready and available?
I don't think they're turning down roles. They probably should be, but I don't think they are, because the reality is the issue there is that there's not really any visibility on the gender pay gap in specific instances. So we absolutely know that it's there. The data absolutely says that it's there. It's on average 17% gap, depending on where you look. But every organization I ever work with their going in position is, we don't have a gender pay gap, not here, because obviously they don't intend to have one. And then when we look at the data, we see, okay, yes, we do have a gender pay gap. So I don't think people are turning down roles because there's a gap, because they're not seeing it. Just like I don't think many women are leaving roles because of the gender pay gap, because they're not actually aware that there is a gap. And, you know, I can tell you, when I was working, you know, even up to senior levels, it did not occur to me at that time that I might be being paid less than a man for doing the same job. It just would not have occurred to me. Knowing everything that I know now, I am pretty certain that if I'd had visibility on it, I would absolutely have seen that I was being paid less for doing the same job. So I actually think the lack of visibility is a key issue. Women don't really, they know in theory that it's happening. Most of them don't really believe that it's happening to them. Women are also generally pretty uncomfortable actually talking about salary. Every woman I know, even the, you know, really senior, hyper successful women, the women that I call my super 7%, women who win at work in the book, even they have all told me that they were really, really uncomfortable talking about salary, and the best they ever managed was to kind of, you know, put an email through to their boss in quite a shy way. So it's a major issue. It's not visible. Women don't talk about it. And, you know, honestly, I actually wish that women were seeing it and turning jobs down because of it and leaving jobs because of it, because then we'd fix it. If employers could see the consequences of losing women as a result.
I totally agree. And I think just salaries generally, there's no transparency around it. So people don't know what the going rate is in a particular location, a particular sector. So I'm all for transparency, especially around salaries just generally, I think. In the book, you mentioned a university did a study and found that men with children were most desired applicants, opposed to women with children that are least. How do we overcome that sort of stereotype of, you're a woman, you've got children, therefore you're not going to be as attractive as a man with children? How do we get over that, break that barrier?
Well, firstly, let's just acknowledge that isn't that absolutely infuriating? And it is true. That is absolutely what the research found. And, you know, there are many, many gender biases that people face. And, you know, by the way, there are gender biases that men suffer from as well, not just women. But I think the key issue with being a mom or a dad in the workplace, and the reason that that's viewed so differently, is fundamentally because the burden of childcare in our society does generally fall on women. We know that women, you know, on average are carrying about 80% of the unpaid work for the family if they have a family, even if they have a very successful career of their own. So there is just that bias that the woman is going to do that work. So if the woman, you know, has children, she may have more children. The bias is that she will be the one who will back away from the career and be less committed, whereas the man can happily be the father, and the bias is that he won't do that. So you just get all the positives of, you know, well, he must be a solid chap because he's managed to, you know, create a family and sustain a family, and, you know, must be a decent human being. So he gets all the positives, but none of the negatives. And I think on this one specifically, honestly, the biggest thing that we need to do is just get way more gender neutral about our expectations of who does the parenting and who does the caring and who does the looking, you know, after the home. And as employers, you know, one of the big things that I say to employers is you need to have gender neutral parental policies, well, policies in general, by the way, but parental policies, but they need to be truly gender neutral in practice, not just on paper. Many employers now in theory, it's gender neutral. In theory, the man has the right to take up flexible work. He has the right to take up hybrid work. He has the right to leave early. He maybe even has the right to equivalent parental leave. In some countries, in Sweden, he absolutely does. But if that's just written as a policy in the HR booklet, but actually what happens, and this does happen, is that when a man asks his employer if he can take up that policy, and in response he sees raised eyebrows and questions about how committed he is to his career, those policies are literally just going to be on paper. They're never going to come true in practice. So I think it's really important that employers, you know, when a manager, you know, is sitting in front of somebody who comes to them to talk about those policies, whatever gender they are, they need to have the absolute same response, which is, of course you can do that. Of course you can work from home. Of course you can take that parental leave. And then we need to reinforce that. We need to role model that. You know, when a man does it, I have friends who took their full parental leave allowance, but they faced, you know, massive mockery from other men saying, you know, you're going to be drinking lattes, what a fun time you're going to be having, you're going on holiday. It was extremely difficult for them to do it, and they did it. But we shouldn't make it difficult. These men should be heroes, because they're role modeling something that in the future we really want men to do. We want, you know, all genders to, you know, really be equal on this. And the big thing I always say is, you know, I want us to be 50-50 at work at those top levels. We will never be 50-50 in the workplace until we're 50-50 at home. And we'll never be 50-50 at home until we, you know, when we see a man who's a parent, we do not have all those biases towards him versus the woman who's a parent. We just have to change that.
So again, do you think men should do more to voice that and to champion that? Because I think, again, being a man, we need to shout, I think, a bit more about that issue. And I think we don't, whether that's a UK thing or a global thing. Do you think men need to speak up more to raise this issue?
You know, it's absolutely not a UK thing. It's absolutely a global thing. I think men everywhere face this issue. I know, since I wrote Why Men Win at Work, I've had so many men writing to me saying, Jill, you talk a lot about 50-50 at home. I would love to be 50-50 at home, but I'm not getting the support of my employer to do that. So absolutely, I think men have to voice it. They have to set that expectation. I think they're doing a service to women when they do that, but they're also doing an enormous service to other men, because the brave men who go first and say, oi, this is a policy, I want to take it up. If a woman has a right to take it up, I have a right to take it up. The first ones to do that make it easier for the second ones to do that, and the third ones to do that. So I think it's really important for men, you know, don't just speak up, but also when you see somebody else speaking up, support them rather than, you know, ganging up and making it a joke, because that's just going to keep us really stuck.
It's a win-win, isn't it, scenario, which is what it's all about. Your book also touches on the issue of gender bias and how it affects women in the workplace. It'd be great to understand the most common forms of gender bias, really, and how they can be addressed, in your opinion. What do you think we need to change as a workforce to change that?
There are so many biases, you know, working against women in the workplace, and obviously, you know, not just women. I think the fundamental, I talk about all the invisible and unconscious and usually unintended forces that are actually all at play in the workplace that, you know, we don't see them, but my goodness, when you're on the end of them, you feel them. And they, you know, they start in the bias of, I call it the invisible power of culture. You know, a culture is just inherently biased towards the dominant group in the culture, and the dominant group don't see that bias, but my goodness, the people in the non-dominant group absolutely do. So, you know, if you're in a dominant culture and you're part of that dominant culture, you recognize yourself in everybody else, you feel very relaxed, you feel belonging, you feel comfortable, you feel secure, you can perform. That bias is, that culture is biased towards you. It's like a wind that's helping you. And obviously if you're not part of that dominant culture, you feel the opposite. You feel intrinsically that you don't belong, you're not relaxed, you're not comfortable, you just can't perform in the same way. You try to fit in instead of focusing on what you're strong at. That makes you seem a little bit inauthentic and untrustworthy. So the culture itself, and obviously if you're in a male dominant culture and you're a man, you are more likely to feel comfortable and that you can perform in that culture than if you're a woman. So the culture itself in male dominant organizations, and frankly virtually every organization in the world is male dominant at the more senior levels. Culture itself is biased against women. I think there is another really important bias, which is a very natural. The thing about biases, they're all natural and human, right? There's nothing evil itself in a bias. We all have them. It's just that the biases do work against people. So we have, and for people, we have to be very aware of that. But the bias towards confidence, right? So we love confidence in people. We favor people who are confident. If they're confident in themselves, I'm confident in them. I'm going to give them that job. I'm going to give them that project. I'm going to give them that responsibility. But obviously one of the issues is that, and it's a huge generalization, but it is generally true, that women are less confident in themselves than men, even though they are no less competent. We know women are absolutely not less competent. So the bias towards confidence and away from, a lack of overt self-confidence is also something that, massively works towards women. The bias towards visibility and presenteeism. I talk a lot about the umbrella theory, which is this concept that when we're working in an organization, it's like we're all under umbrellas. Our boss just sees the tops of umbrellas. They don't actually see our work. And there is a bias to the people that we see, to the people that we know. And women generally are much less savvy about the umbrella theory. They're not so good at carving out that time to network and to make their work visible and to share the project and to get input to the project. So that bias towards the person we see and the person we know generally works against women as well. And there are lots of reasons why women don't come out of the umbrella, from under the umbrella so much. One of them being the time issue, because of the amount of unpaid work at home she's doing at the end of the working day that we've talked about. So so many biases, and that's without even talking about the all those big ones, like when a woman does try to, when she understands things that work for men, like for example discussing salary and requesting a pay rise, or being vocal in meetings and pushing their share of voice, there is a lot of data to say that that is not well received, because that is not the expectation that we have of women, because of all those things we're programmed to believe from birth, from TV and films and etc., about what a man should be like and what a woman should be like. So I mean, these biases are everywhere, and the key is to know that they are. The key is not to try and make them go away. The key is to know they are here. If I look around me and I see a male dominant culture, then I know that I have a problem, because that culture will be biasing towards men and away from women. And that's going to lead me to conclude that it's the man who should get the promotion, when actually maybe it should be the woman. So I mean, so many biases to work on, but when you understand them, you can work on them. That's the good news.
Huge topic, and yeah, unfortunately I don't think it's going to change quickly, which is sad, but like you said, it's about knowing the biases and dealing with them, I think, when you see them. So based on that question, what advice would you give women who are I suppose, navigating themselves through a career that is favoured in a man's way, in a man's corner. What advice would you give them to navigate themselves through a man's world, I suppose, in the working sense?
The biggest, I've got so many tips. You'll know the last chapter of the book is a huge to-do list for everybody: parents, teachers, media makers, managers, human resources, men and women. The biggest thing I would say to women is it starts with that invisible power of culture and that competence versus confidence equation. You need to find your confident core. And I absolutely believe that every woman does have a confident core, even if she doesn't feel like she does. And I always think it's like an apple, right? No matter how bruised and battered and soft and brown the apple is on the outside, you go to the middle, there is a very, very solid and strong core inside. If for any woman out there who has not done the work to find her confident core, you need to do that, and you do that. I'm a massive fan of the Strengths Finder methodology, and really finding your superpowers, the things that you do uniquely and brilliantly in this world. Find that confident core, know those strengths and superpowers, and use them. The Super 7% women that I've interviewed, they do this brilliantly from a really early stage in their career. They knew what their superpowers were, and they stayed away from the rest. They got themselves into a culture where they were seen, they were valued, their superpowers were valued and leveraged, and they stuck there. And if they found themselves in a culture where they were using those superpowers and they weren't valued and leveraged, they took their talent and their brilliance somewhere else, because their confident core told them, you're not the problem. The culture is the problem, not you. So do that. And obviously what that gives you, it gives you that confidence, right? When you have a confident core, when you found it, you speak with confidence. People can hear it. They can literally feel it from you. They can feel that you're coming from a place of real strength and a place of real belief in yourself, and they will listen. So that whole, that competence versus confidence equation is very real. People will be attracted to the confidence, so make sure you've got it, but genuine confidence, not fake confidence, the confidence that comes from having a confident core. So that's the first big thing that I would say. And the second big thing would be, never ever forget that umbrella theory. Never forget, you need to come out from under that umbrella and invite your boss in and share your work, your projects, because otherwise, I've heard so many women over the years say, I do great work and my work should speak for itself. No, I never want to hear you say that, because that is a myth of meritocracy that is just not real in the workplace. You have to, I always say, however much time in the week you've got to do your work, carve out 10% of it for making your work visible and yourself visible. Just be a little bit selfish about that, because otherwise you will be very frustrated in your career, and you will see other people, often men, getting your job, your promotion, your leadership position that, based on your competence, you absolutely deserved.
Gill Whitty-Collins, thank you so much for your valuable time this afternoon. People watching, if you haven't bought the book, Why Men Win at Work, if you have like that, Why Men Win at Work, then please do. And Gill, lots of people watching this and want to keep in touch with you. Very, very powerful thought leader. How do people connect with you, and how do they stay in touch with you? Have you got a newsletter, or can we find you on LinkedIn? How do we keep in touch with you?
I absolutely have a newsletter, and I'd love you all to sign up to it, because that's a great way to be connected. So I am going to give Josh the link to that newsletter so that you can he can share that with you all. I am also, obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on my website, gillwhittycollins.com. So if you want to find me, I'm here, and I'd love to hear from you.
Gill, thanks again for your valuable time, and look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.